All right, everyone, welcome to Crackle Comics Weekly. This is episode 61. We're going to talk about some new comics, and we're going to talk about an old comic today. Interesting kind of split show. Sometimes we do retro, a bunch of retro books. Sometimes we review a single big book. We did that with Pulp. And usually we just review new issues, so we're mixing it all together. And my name is Vincent, and I'm joined by
Dan.
Mike.
Those are their names, and we're going to get right into things. Or actually, I think what we usually do is, do you guys have comments on the week?
I currently can't hear out of my left ear, so that's fun.
Did you walk next to an alarm or something?
No, it's some like blockage thing, I think. I don't know what it is. It should pop and go back to normal by tomorrow.
That's happened to me before. And the only thing I have to report is that I was up at 3 a.m. 2 days this week for work, so screw it.
What do you want, metal?
I do.
Yeah, I think, well, you woke up at 3 a.m. You didn't stay up till 3 a.m. doing work, right?
No.
Okay. Because I remember watching one of your, Dan has his own channel. Go check out Mandak, I think it's called. And one of his haul videos, he was talking about how he had to get up at 3 for work one day, and I think I was watching at like 2, which I thought was kind of funny. But
just think, Dan, when you're getting up for work, me and Vince are still up usually.
That's what I'm saying. I think that day I remember seeing a post from you on like one of you guys on Discord, and I just got to work and I got a post. I'm like, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. What are they doing sending stuff in the Discord? So yeah, fun times.
Being depressed and up late.
Something like that. All right, so we're gonna go right into things, and I'm gonna talk first about I think a couple of books in a row. I think I'm recapping all the books except for our retro. So it kind of worked out because because I didn't read the thing we're going to talk about towards the end. Was not able to get to it, etc. So we're going to jump right into some books, and Mike will have some thoughts on a couple of them as well. So, but I will first tell you about them. So in Green Lantern #1, this is the new first issue of the new series following Future State, written by Jeffrey Thorne with art by Dexter Soy. So in the present, Oa is being attacked, and the Lanterns, led by John Stewart, are fighting whatever the threat is. And a Thanagarian shows up, and she's acting like really aggressively towards John, but she's like a redhead and a chick. So given his relationship at times with Hawkgirl, I was kind of confused. But then flashback a couple hours, this is going down, and we see everything that led to this. So the Thanagarian is a Mayra, possibly pronounced wrong, but it's a made-up Thanagarian name appearing for the first time. So who knows? She is a rep for, I guess, Thanagar and the United Planets, which is usually a Legion thing far in the future. But from context clues in this issue, my understanding is that Bendis has set it up either through his Superman titles and/or Legion of Superheroes. So now the United Planets, starts right now in the present, or shortly before now, I don't know, whatever. And the Conclave is either like a function of the United Planets or like a separate thing, whatever. It's like they're having a big political meeting on Oa with all the other alien races that are part of the United Planets. And basically they're deciding whether to admit Oa as a member of the United Planets. And we basically saw a similar thing as far as a planet being admitted and voted on to the United Planets in Mark Russell's Superman versus Imperious Lex book as part of Future State. So given that I haven't read Bendis' Superman, to me, this feels almost more connected to that Future State book. But as part of this, all the Lanterns, almost all of them have been recalled, to protect and hang out at Oa, which of course, anytime that's a thing, like all the political leaders, all the cops come in one area, you're always expecting something to go down because that's referenced here. And then basically everyone is voting on whether Oa should be accepted and kind of whether, like, a lot of judgment on whether how the Lanterns and the Guardians, are supposed to interact with the rest of, the United Planets and whether they should be cops and whether they have jurisdiction over there and over here. And out in the streets where Simon Baz is, kind of escorting and making sure Teen Lantern doesn't get into any trouble. They run into some like magic people who awaken something deep inside Oa. I didn't 100% understand what they're trying to describe here because it's somehow related to the Star Heart, which is usually part of Alan Scott's lore, but of course, over time that's been looped into the Green Lantern Corps. So basically, like these tentacles grow out of the middle of Oa and are destroying everything, and the Lanterns are trying to fight it. But John quickly figures out, thanks to some dude who shows up, and this dude's like not fully introduced well, but I guess he's a new character that might stick around. But essentially, the idea is to defeat this, we don't fight it with force. We kind of just sit here and meditate and like turn off our rings and take off our clothes. And so then everything chills down. The magic people are upset and they lost. And then Oa is accepted into the United Planets, and that's where we end. So and also, what's his name? Mike will be able to correct me when I bring him in a second. But like the main Guardian dude dies. I forget his name. That's where we end. So that's the big tease. They're part of the United Planets. There's going to be a little bit of a status quo shift as far as like how the Lanterns are interacting with the rest of the alien races. I thought this was nice. You saw a lot of characters, or at least referenced. We saw a character from Colu, which is where the Brainiac's family is from. Obviously I mentioned Thanagarians. We see Sinestro. He has a kind of cool little speech from his perspective. We saw Red Lanterns. We see Daxam mentioned and the Dominators and new races and everything. The actual crowd shots are slightly underwhelming. Well, they might be. I don't have like an encyclopedic knowledge of like cosmic DC, so it could be that every single thing on this page is a race that's already existed. But for me, it's like you see like two things that totally exist that I'm certain about, like Red Lanterns or like Daxams. And then everything else looks like pretty generic. So I don't know if they just told the artists like just make up some shit. But I'm sure there's some Reddit post breaking down everything in the background of those pages. It seems that this first issue in this series going into it kind of hand wave over some recent continuity. And like I was saying, you could get into the nuts and bolts of some of the United Planets reps here. Like should the Dominators really be part of this? Should the Daxams, etc.? But overall, I enjoyed this. I thought the art was fun, and I like John's characterization and everything. I thought everything was fun.
Yeah. Did Dan read this? I thought he did read this. Do you want to ask him?
I did.
Yeah. So I was like, I told him to read it, and he said he was going to, and we did show breakdowns last week. But number one, I think this is a lot better than the issue of Future State we read, because that was pretty bad. So we gave him the benefit of the doubt that, okay, when Jeffrey Thorne can actually do Green Lantern stuff in 2 months, it'll probably be better, and it was. Number two, I think Dexter Soy's art is also much better than the stuff we saw in Future State. Number three, that wasn't Ganthet, because they never call him Ganthet, and even on the promo images for Here Lies a Dead Guardian, doesn't say Ganthet on it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that was not Ganthet who died, because if so, they definitely would have said it was Ganthet. What am I on? Number four. I think this is a terrible cover for the first issue of the book, because
it's pretty misleading.
Center with the Guardian, while John is like very small off in the corner. So I was like already like, oh wait, I thought this was going to be John's book and Teen Lantern's front and center. So no, it's very much John's book, which I was happy to see, because Jeffrey Thorne was like definitely talking up how he was excited to have John in the forefront in his promotion of this. Overall, it's a good start. I like it. And I liked the touch of like the ceremonial garb was modeled after Kryptonian. I thought that was pretty cool and a nice touch. But overall, like a good first start for the handle of John here. And it was fun to see Kilowog and Guy show up too. I'm interested to see how Thorne works in some of the other Lanterns, because we had cameos here and even like a hologram Hal Jordan showed up for a good bit. And it wasn't like completely bearing of Hal Jordan. And, Jeffrey Thorne's been very vocal about how he does not like Hal Jordan, but he handled him pretty good here. So overall, I'm excited to see what comes. This was another good first issue debut for a run in Infinite Frontier, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, I mean, not much else to add. I mean, you guys kind of hit on it, but I felt like this issue was just very grand in like scope. I felt like there's a lot of stuff going on, and the art, the layouts of the pages were just amazing. I don't know what it was of this art. I guess like I'm not sure if I'm just overestimating it or whatever, but I
A
thought it
lot
was
of
really
wide shots.
yeah, a lot of wides. It's very felt very like I guess maybe that's what kind of helped with it. That felt very cinematic in some ways, I guess. Um, and obviously that's what a lot of people go for these days. But some great splash pages in there. But yeah, I mean, this is a really cool intro. I like all the characters in here. Kind of introducing them all, and yeah, I'll definitely keep reading. So
Yeah, I'm excited to see where Thorn takes this. I do want to know though, like if this also like it's the perfect time to kind of streamline DC's alien races because it's always kind of been a jumbled mess compared to Marvel. So maybe Jeffrey Thorne does that with the whole United Planets thing taking off here. That'd be interesting to see. Like, could we possibly get some Tamaranian Green Lantern shows up, or like there's stuff like on there? So it'd be cool to see how he works on the rest of the alien races and maybe streamline this a little bit too.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. All right, moving into Swamp Thing number 2 by Ram V, Mike Perkins, colored by Mike Spicer. So Levi, who's like our new Swamp Thing, he keeps having nightmares where he turns into Swamp Thing all the way across the country. He lives in Brooklyn, but Swamp Thing shows up in Arizona, and he's like taunted and follows around this like vampire type of killer dude who's killing like campers and like people running from the law and people trying to sneak across, immigrate to the U.S. And a sheriff in town is also after the killer. And one night after a pep talk from his partner, Levi, as Swampy, kind of takes more initiative within his nightmare Swamp Thing trance and takes out the killer. And suddenly there's a humongous tree, like an Indian tree, in the middle of the desert near the border, like humongous. So it's a big media attraction, and Batman is checking it out from the Batcave, and others are checking it out. There's someone in shadow. I don't know who this is. It could be Floronic Man or whatever the hell. This is pretty good. Some of the coloring seemed a little too vibrant in my view. There's a bar scene with the sheriff where they're kind of going for like the dingy like late night bar with some like maybe like a neon sign really glowing inside, but basically the whole scene is like purple. It's just like very prominent, and I think they went just a little bit too far with that, but that's a very minor quibble.
Once again, I also think Dan read this as well. So
I forgot.
The only one he didn't read was Marauders.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with this one. No, I mean I think this is definitely. I agree though. There is some in terms of art. Yeah, there are some times where it's a little overdone, but like it definitely sets the mood. This is. I don't know. I don't read a lot of Swamp Thing, so like I don't really know what type of art style really to expect from these stories, but I really like this one. I love the text bubbles. Just like the really creepy like dripping kind of like black bubbles with the white text in them. I think that's really cool. No, this is just very like action packed, and definitely will be reading the next issue. That last like splash at the end with the tree is just very creepy looking. So, no, this is really cool.
Outside of the possible continuity break of Batman viewing this from the Batcave, because shouldn't he be in his little basement of his brownstone that he's living in right now? Unless that's also being called the Batcave. So it's very good. We've had 4 issues of Mike Perkins drawing Swamp Thing now, and to me, they've all been very good to great. Is this a little bit worse than issue 1? Yeah, a little bit, but overall, I still think the fights are good, and that ominous last shot of that very horrifying looking tree in the middle of the desert looks pretty good. So I'm excited to see what comes. only 8 more issues to go. Hopefully, this catches on and spins into that hopeful ongoing if it sells high enough, because I think Ram V and Mike Perkins have something going here.
Yeah, I think, obviously it's a shift. Dan was asking about art. There's nothing specifically that you'd look for in a Swamp Thing book on that level, besides, plants and stuff. But obviously this is a different take. They have this Levi character, Swamp Thing, though not every single Swamp Thing run has been, like Al Collins / not Al Collins. You had the BKV run, which very much focused on his daughter, Tife. But I'm kind of waiting to see as this goes along, because I was saying this as we were reading Future State, which that was like a little bit, I think that was supposed to be Al Collins, but as we knew that this was coming, I'm kind of waiting for this to be done. It could still be a good comic. It could still be a great Swamp Thing comic, but me as a Swamp Thing fan, I would prefer if it was just like, Al Collins / fake Al Collins, depending on the continuity. But I'm sure, they may loop it back around and connect it to other things and vice versa. So we'll see as the story continues, but everything was executed really well. And now our third new issue that we chose to cover this week, Marauders number 19 from Jerry Duggan, Stefano Caselli. So Verendi, the teenage dorks, are terrorizing Lowtown and Madripoor. And the mutants can't touch soil directly because of international relation treaty, all the junk status quo with Krakoa. So they sneak a gate into the sewers. Kate Pryde swims across, and the one thing that I don't like about this is that, and again, unless I was totally blind, so in order for Kate to sneak into the sewers and do her thing, which I'm about to explain, Iceman and Pyro, they're calling themselves the Two. They're creating this huge distraction, and it's like this giant ice column that's spewing fire and stuff, and it's described off panel, but we don't see it at all, which is maybe it's a joke that we don't see it, but I thought that was super clunky. And it's this is comic books. If you want to talk about this giant, distracting, ridiculous looking ice sculpture with fire, maybe the joke is that it's like a giant penis, because there's a little bit of comedy hinted at there, and maybe that's the joke, and that's also the joke why they're not showing us it on the panel. But I thought that was either the joke wasn't fully sold, or I thought it was stupid that we didn't see it. But Kate Pryde sneaks into the sewers and plants a gate, and then they recruit the Morlocks, who I guess never actually went to Krakoa for the most part. They're kind of off in their area, so they're kind of not breaking the rules. So they start fighting for the Madripoor folks, and Lowtown is now called Muty Town, and the Morlocks basically have the Princess Bar as their headquarters. We get to see Mero. That's the main thing. The other characters I don't care about.
I kind of like the Doctor character we saw 2 issues ago, but I guess the big plan was they shot the thing off, and Kate was phasing through it to get to the grate. That was the part of showing it. So that was the takeaway I could. Overall, it wasn't an exceptionally grand issue. It was kind of just a bridge to get to our next spot. And it was another good issue of Marauders. I don't have a lot to write on about it. Stefano Caselli still looked good. I still enjoy this book. I thought we would have gotten more set up for the Hellfire Gala here, but I guess that's not really until the deep summer, until June. So overall, this wraps up the little story they were doing in Madripoor.
So I just out of curiosity, scrolling through the wiki, so some of these Morlock characters here, basically the 2 guys who look very similar, they're the big brutish characters. This is their first appearance since New Mutants number 100 in 1991 from Liefeld and the UCAs. Pretty cool.
All right, well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a weird period right now with the X-Men books, where granted, as we have discussed probably on the last episode, we're not reading all of them. We're not even reading the majority at this point. But I don't fully get I don't have a great feel for the direction of the titles right now. The initial 12 issues or so, most of the titles we kind of knew, they were still, fully establishing the Krakoa status quo, and each book had a certain mission involved. But like things kind of slowed down, and then Ten of Swords happened, and then it's just kind of went right back into being slowed down, with a couple exceptions, like the latest X-Men issue picked up on specific threads, but like I don't really know where Marauder is pointing, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm not sure.
No, it seems that the only one that has a real type of beginning, middle, end, or at least that's not the right words for it, at least, defined narrative of where they're going is X-Force right now with Ben Percy. And that, like you said, that's not bad. Like, I'm fine with, one book has a long story arc, ones have smaller broken up ones. That's fine. I just want to know what the overall plan is going forward, because it has felt like things have stagnated a bit. I kind of feel like you're looking for your first chance to dip out on most of these. I could be wrong there, but that's what it kind of feels like you're inching towards here.
I mean, not necessarily. I just feel like, I don't know, some of these are not totally grabbing me in the same way that they did for the first, 8 to 12 issues. And, knowing that there's, the thing we bring up constantly, knowing that there's more books and more books, it's like, which ones do I really care about? Like, we're probably going to try a couple of the number ones that are coming up. There's like basically like a new thing every month until the fall. They just, kind of put out an image showing the slate recently. There's a new number one in 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah, 2 weeks. Way of X number one from Cy Spurrier and Bob Q, which I think is the book with Nightcrawler. But I don't know. And then there, behind the scenes and long term, there's also internally, I'm having, anxiety and internal debate on how I may want to add certain pieces of this era of X-Men to my shelf, because if I got every single thing, then that's a whole mess, and I already basically stopped myself from doing that for X-Men in general. But I recently bought, I haven't received them yet, but I did buy actually the House of X hardcover and Ten of Swords. So I probably intend to get the first like hardcovers for some of the key series, basically the ones they're probably putting out. I don't expect them to do I don't even remember what the title was called, the one that Brian Edward Hill did. I don't even expect them to do a hardcover of that, which only went 6 issues anyways.
Not Children of the Atom, Fallen Angels.
Yeah, Fallen Angels. So
that was only 6 issues.
Yeah. So I don't know. We will at least keep up some form of X-Men coverage as we move forward. But now we're flashing the past to 2006, and then we'll flash to the past a different point. I think before 2006. I think like early 2000s or late 90s.
1999.
Okay. All right. So Mike's going to talk about this, and then Dan and I will have thoughts, and then they'll have thoughts.
Yeah, well, this is our first kind of retro book, because we'll talk about trade paperback from 1999, but more recently just republished. But Birds of Prey number 99 from December of 2006. This is Gail Simone, James Diaz, and then Robin Riggs on inks. This is relatively close to when Gail Simone's run on Burdens of Prey would end. She was on the book from issues 56 to 108, so only 9 more issues to go here. Before Tony Bedard would come in. And then she would launch a new number one, which would last for 15 issues before the New 52 in Brightest Day. And I know there was a Birds of Prey book in the New 52, but I can't remember if she wrote that. But the opening of this book here sees Black Canary and Huntress tracking down a gun runner who has threatened the children that Huntress is looking after, which makes it like a big personal stakes business for her. So leading to the point where they follow this woman up the building rooftop, where the big moment in question is Helen is going to drop her off or not. And then she, of course, she doesn't. She's talked down by Dinah, and it's made to play. It's played for that reason of because Black Canary's here, she's mellowing out under her and Barbara, and then that's the end of that mission. So while that's happening, Barbara's who's, by the way, Oracle full time back then. She didn't have her spine fixed yet. That would happen a few years later, but more like close to a decade, but was fighting with a teenage girl who had snuck into her to her clock tower, trying to claim the mantle of Batgirl for herself. I think, is this I'll have to ask Vince. He can tell me when we break, but I think this might be the time when they did the stupid heel turn with Cassandra Cain. But we definitely do see that this is at the time when Stephanie Brown was dead. But this like high school teenager who's like some reckless, kind of child rebel. She's like a prominent child of an actress, and she's like lashing out and using her skills as like a gymnastics and sports kid to gain attention for herself as a superhero. So she's trying to claim the title of Batgirl. And then seeing that Barbara basically beats her, and then she shows her the recent history of the Batgirl Mantor, shows her the cautionary, ramifications of she, chooses this life for herself. So she shows us the bullet that paralyzed her, and then the dead photos of Stephanie Brown's body, which this is post-war games, so she's dead but not really dead because it was a fake out by Leslie Tompkins, and that's a whole other topic for another time. Don't read war games, it's stupid. The talk kind of sets her straight though, where she says that she isn't going to be Batgirl, but eventually she'll be a superhero anyway. So the ending, the big ending of this is Barbara and Dinah sharing a heart-to-heart with the unfortunate news that Black Canary is going to leave the team. So this is basically her saying goodbyes and also showing her the memoir, which she's finished and is going to, planning on releasing. And the last pages here is Helena alone wondering how the team's going to continue without Black Canary on it. Overall, it's a good issue. Like, I haven't read much of Birds of Prey. I definitely want to later on. I think the art here, it skirts lines at times. Like, I'm thinking back to our discussions with Batman Catwoman in terms of how much cheesecake is too much cheesecake. And one of the opening splash pages definitely does that. But overall, like the Gail Simone writing here and characterization is really, really good. And it's, 2060 DC. It's an era for these characters that I miss. And I think it just keeps hammering home that, I said almost a decade when Barbara was getting her ability to walk back, but really half of a decade. 2011 is, 5 years away, and then the DC universe I know kind of goes away. And I think the more we read in that 2000s, the pre-New 52 DC, the more I go, wow, I really just don't like anything that came after the New 52. But, hopefully with, Rebirth and now Infinite Frontier, maybe inching towards something that I can make peace with. But, that was a rough period, I think, looking back on it from 2011 to what was it, 2015, because a lot of this stuff is really, really good. And I really liked it, even though only reading bits and pieces. But overall, this was a good issue, I thought. So I'll break for you guys. What's the thoughts here on Birds of Prey 99? Dan, did you know who these characters were?
Yes, I did. No, I thought this was pretty action-packed. Like you said, I mean, there is definitely a little bit of cheesecake going on before the actually a lot, actually. But no, I thought it was pretty interesting. The art at some points felt a little off to me, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting. You said this is part of the New 52, right?
No,
no?
It's not what I said. It's pre-New 52. It's 06.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so it's before it. Okay, my bad. Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was somewhat interesting, but yeah, the art here there's some really weird faces going on. But yeah, I don't know. Birds of Prey, semi-decent movie. And this is a semi-decent issue.
I mean, I would say, well, number one, Vince can't comment on the movie because he hasn't watched it, but I would put that as like the second best of the DC movies. But that movie not really in line with the book, more in name than the book.
Definitely.
Well, the art comments are interesting, and it's definitely in the book, but it's just interesting because it's cheesecakey, but I wouldn't necessarily describe. I think this is Hayes' Size, or however you say his name, or no, it's James Diaz. I don't know who that is. I thought it was Hayes' Size. Totally different. But I'm not that familiar with this artist, so I won't say anything specifically about them. But obviously, the genesis of Gail's run on Birds of Prey was with Ed Benez, who is definitely a cheesecakey artist. So I feel like we're still in the era where that was just kind of like what a lot of comics looked like, especially comics starring female characters. And also, like, basically the start of this run was that. So they were probably kind of, loosely still trying to keep up the aesthetic as it went on, even when artists changed. Um, the Cassandra Cain, face turn here, it's a couple months or maybe like a full year before this. Let's see, this is December. No, it was like around 6 months before this, because we're in 2006, so this is after Infinite Crisis. So most of the titles are in their 1 year later arc. This might still be the first 1 year later arc for Birds of Prey. I'm not sure. This is like a couple issues into an arc technically, and the girl who's like trying to impersonate Batgirl, she eventually, I mean, she's never like formally like an official member, but she essentially loosely joins the Birds of Prey as a character called Misfit, I mean, she basically still like stays as like a bootleg Batgirl, but she does kind of get her own costume, and she can like teleport and stuff and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think this is good, and Gail Simone, probably her longest run in Big Two comics. I don't think there's anything that would really rival it. Secret Six might be almost as long, but those.
I think is like 36 issues. Then if you count the new 52 stuff, and I guess you've got to count the 5 issues of Villains United, but 56 to 108 is a pretty long run, and then the second run after it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard pressed to find someone to say that either Birds of Prey and or Secret Six are not, Gale's definitive works. And this was an interesting kind of point to pop in on it. I would definitely say it's not the highest point, but it's not really a low point either at all. And DC has recently been putting out reprints of it, and they're kind of wonky because they came out like right at the same time as the movie. So like maybe a bunch of stores bought a ton anticipating the movie to be a hit, but like, quality aside, I haven't seen it, as Mike said, but like, I don't know, like the movie wasn't like a huge hit as far as I know. So I don't know that people were like rushing to buy the books in the same way that like Invincible is flying off the shelves right now, and other examples of that, or like Watchmen when the show was popping off. But at the same time, there's also the distributor switch up that DC did. So like the first Birds of Prey book that they put out, the recent reprint, it's like oddly super hard to find online, but I don't think it's like, but I have a theory it's one of those like fake out of print books where you just can't find it online, but like it's not actually valuable. So if you find it in a store, good to grab, great run, and the book might be fake, fake rare. And now
I would say the worst thing is that a lot of those more recent ones, if depending on how much you hate covers, that DC likes to do this thing where they have a movie come out and they will put the cover as the movie poster of the book, and it's the most annoying thing. They did that with Green Lantern Secret Origin. So if you get one of the more recent trades with that, you're stuck with the stupid Ryan Reynolds movie cover on it.
I will say, so they put out a bunch of like Birds of Prey related books for the movie, and a lot of them were weird. It was like, I think they did a reprint, a long overdue reprint of the
Huntress
Batman,
Cry.
the Batman Huntress book. And I think that may have had a dumb movie cover, and then there's like a Black Canary thing which had a dumb movie cover. But actually, the Birds of Prey, the Gail Simone Birds of Prey reprints, none of those are movie covers. But yeah, I definitely, whether it's comics or novels, I hate the photo covers. If it's a big enough book, what a publisher can try and do is do like half of a run with art-based covers and half a run with photo covers. Like that's what Dynamite did with The Boys when the TV show came out. So you have 6 Boys books, but there's 2 variations of each. I don't know if DC cares to do that, but whatever. So now they're going to talk about another retro book at longer length and more details.
Yeah, things got kind of busy this week, and I basically was like, all right, what else do we want to talk about? And we decided on Scene of the Crime by Ed Brubaker, Michael Lark, and Sean Phillips. And I don't. By no means is it a secret that I think that all three of us are big fans of Ed Brubaker and his longtime collaborator Sean Phillips. For me, I was first exposed to Ed's work in his Captain America and Daredevil runs, and then you go down the rabbit hole of, oh wait, he did DC work. Oh, and it includes Batman. Oh, I want to read that, and then you read Batman, and then you go, oh wait, what's this Gotham Central thing? And then Gotham Central then leads you on the further rabbit hole down for his crimes comic work, which is where Sean Phillips then comes in. But at this point, I have read some of his works from Criminal, The Fade Out, Kill or Be Killed, now Pulp, and Reckless is sitting on my shelf, and maybe we'll do a series on those too, because I think the second one's like due out maybe like in 1 or 2 weeks. But today, though, we're going to talk about the Scene of the Crime, which is technically Brubaker's first crime comic, if you don't count his work on a book called An Accidental Death, which he wrote that. I think it might have been a Caliber Press book. But his first work for Vertigo, which, the now defunct subset of DC, and his first time working with Michael Lark and Sean Phillips. Michael Lark does the pencils for this entire series, and he inks the first issue. And then Brubaker in the back matter material of the trade paperback that just came out says that Lark was unhappy with his inks, and they brought in Sean Phillips to give them a different flavor. So Phillips inks issues 2 through 4. This was originally meant to be titled House of Mystery to coincide with the old DC comic of the same name. Vertigo was doing a thing at the time where they had a version of House of Secrets that was a horror themed thing, and he was like, oh, we could do House of Mystery when he was pitching it, but for whatever reason, the idea of that was nixed, and then the series became known as Scene of the Crime, and then A Little Piece of Good Night. That was like the subtitle, shortened to now just Scene of the Crime, because it was originally intended as an ongoing, but then that got nixed, and then multiple miniseries, hence the subtitle. But then this is all we got. Brubaker talked about how Michael Lark began drawing a Hawkman title, which put off the sequels, and then it was like 2 years later, and then the project dies. But he does end up working with Michael Lark again, of course, on Gotham Central, and then their Eisner winner run on Daredevil. So it's not like they never worked again. They did 2 seminal works with each other afterwards. But so after all that, this is, yes, another crime noir novella written in 1998, released in 1999. The story follows private investigator Jack Harriman as he is hired by this woman named Alex Jordan on the recommendation of his father's former partner to try and find Alex's younger sister Maggie, who's been missing for nearly a month. And Jack is a man in his mid to late 20s, and also he sports like a glass eye, but you don't find that out until it's a kind of a clever way they do it in the book. We'll talk about that later. I'm sure Dan and I will talk about how that reveal there. It was a very sly reveal, but he lives above his aunt and uncle's art gallery named Scene of the Crime. His uncle is a famous crime scene photographer whose work is actually recognized with merit in the art world. And so people come in and buy prints of these crime scene photos of dead people. It's kind of grisly, but I think it's modeled after an actual famous art photographer who did this. But the thing about Jack's eye, though, is he lost his eye when his father was murdered with a car bomb, and he was hit with some flying shrapnel, leaving a scar over his eye. So Jack's search leads into this hippie commune where they're still practicing some of the sentiments of the Summer of Love. Where this is set in San Francisco, at the time, 1999 San Francisco, where he meets the lead of this place named Joseph Lunar, and he shows him a picture of Maggie to where he has this look of surprisement, but he says she was never there, which is a clear lie. The way it's drawn, it's a clear lie. But Jack instead confirms that she was in fact there by talking to the secretary and had relations with the guy who ran the commune. So then, some rooting around in the trash, he's able to find Maggie's last number of contact, taking him to a hotel up the road. And eventually he does make contact with Maggie after a stakeout and then save her from a mugger. And then she wakes up, and then, he takes her to a diner basically to sober her up, but where she basically shares the story. And to Jack, it seems, hey, all right, looks like she's fine. That might be there's some money involved, might be a blackmail thing. He does notice that she has a loaded gun in her purse, but he's like, all right, this all looks fine. I'll call her sister and she'll pick her up. Case closed. Not quite. He finds out the next morning that she's been murdered, and also she has $10,000 in her closet, making this kind of, a much bigger case than it seemed. So if that sounds interesting to you, stop listening to the podcast now, and then I'm sure you can come back for thoughts. I'll edit that in the audio, timestamp it, but this is your spoiler warning because it gets worse. But this leads down the rabbit hole where we discovered that Alex had in fact lied, and so did his father's partner Raymond. You can, like I said, you can stop now if you don't want to get spoiled. So, okay, here we go. Heartbroken in seeing, the death of Maggie and seeing the money has been left untouched, because he feels bad about this. Jack knows that this wasn't money related and it's something bigger. And he discovers in his uncle's photos that Lunar had, another compound years ago that burned down in a fire, and that Maggie and Alex were both members there as children. Their parents were part of their, this first commune. And their uncle's photo sees a young Maggie next to the, charred body of what they believe to be their father, Jeff. Nope. Turns out Jeff was actually Lunar. Like their mom covered it up and switched the names, and the guy got away, and he didn't die in this fire. And instead, Maggie's mother lied and covered it up. And this is where it gets kind of dark. So warning. So this commune where they were living, they kept the children separated from the parents, and while the parents were engaging in free love, one of the adults was in charge of watching the children. And then this leads down the whole of, sexually exploiting the kids. And it was, Alex who killed Maggie in anger, as this original plan was to exploit Lunar for money. And then when Maggie found out that she was sleeping with her dad again, it gets all more crammed up. And then, the gun gets misplaced, and, all hell breaks loose. And now an already broken family becomes even more broken. And, I'm leaving out some more bits. Like there's a couple good stakeout scenes and some other characters that pop in here. Mainly, near the ending here, the discovery of Lunar's body, which connects all the dots. But for Brubaker's first crime work, I think this is excellent, and it's reflected in his Eisner nomination from 2000. I would say that Brubaker agrees in his reflection of the work that his narration boxes are too long. It is a very wordy book, unlike the more streamlined and narrowed down work. I would say not narrowed down, but much more focused that we get in things like Criminal, for example. But this, or I guess the most comparable thing to this would be maybe The Fade Out, because you're still leading down the mystery of a missing girl who's getting murdered. But yeah, like this is like really good for a debut, your first work for DC Vertigo. But like I said, first real crime work, and it shows in that aspects here, where he's crafted a very good mystery that weaves in and out. And I like the interesting character of Jack, though I think he isn't wildly different from your typical archetype of your cynical private eye. Though the biggest difference is that he's younger, like he's, mid to late 20s, and he's a recovering addict. But like he doesn't dress like your standard PI. Like he's not walking around in a trench coat and fedora. He's like kind of like dressed up in jeans. He's got like messy hair that like it's clearly unwashed, that he can just like swipe it up to a side. And then he like is just wearing like a t-shirt and then covers it up with like a sweater. And it's like very contemporary way of going about things. Like it's like little details there that I think make this character different from some of the others that I've seen him write for a time. But overall, so there's some archetypes that are similar and not. And then I'll go into the artwork here before I break to where Dan and I can talk about this. But Michael Lark's artwork looks a lot more detailed here than it is, I don't want to use the word simplistic as something like Daredevil, Gotham Central, but I think Sean Phillips' inking, it brings out more of a deeper detail to it than you would with the other inkers and colorists that he worked with Daredevil and Gotham Central. And James Sinclair's coloring here, he's kind of going for like a muted and washed warm palette. There's lots of like cool blues and cool oranges and maybe some purples here thrown in the hue patterns for the backing and lighting. And it makes it look worse. I'm saying makes it work, not makes it look worse. It looks very good. Mainly, though, you get more detailed eyes here from Michael Lark than what you would normally see from the times I've read Gotham Central or Daredevil. Both, like, the art here looks great. It's just a different, taste. The eyes kind of reminds me a little bit back when, before his art kind of totally fell off. He was always being known as the eyes guy. no one draws better eyes than John Cassaday, and you can clearly see that here with the very kind of expressive and detailed eyes here as well. Though I think this book is massively different from what you'd see Michael Lark on Daredevil and Gotham Central, but like I said, both good. And Daredevil and Gotham Central have like this heavy setting at night and a much darker lines and color pattern than Scene of the Crime, where there's a lot of stuff that's at day and inside rooms with lighting that's going to be different from like night rooftops of Gotham City or Hell's Kitchen. But overall, like 4 issues in 1999, this was like really, really good. So what did you guys think? And when I say guys, I guess I just mean Dan.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of stuff there. Obviously, like you said, both of us are big Ed Brubaker fans. So looks like Mike's Mike's picture. You froze there for a little bit. But
yeah, I did. My computer froze.
No, that's okay. But no, I mean, Ed Brubaker, seeing like very early Ed Brubaker writing on crime stuff, very entertaining. This was definitely a treat to read this week. Yeah, the dialogue stuff I thought was a little bit of a slog to get through, but honestly, once the books got moving a little bit, it didn't feel as annoying. So, yeah, I would definitely say like you said, like the premise of this story, the plot twist, towards the end of it, I would say this is probably the most twisted of anything I've read through Ed Brubaker, and because like everything else, like Criminal, Fade Out. I mean, some of that stuff is a little screwed up, but at the same time, it's like okay, it's not too bad. But this is pretty some nasty stuff, and like
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but I guess I'm cautiously, I guess, surprised that like this got accolades, because for something talking about this stuff, you would think that might shy some people away from reading it, but it's handled correctly and properly and appropriately, and I think that's what's important. So, yeah, and early Michael Lark too. I think, like you said, it's definitely a much different style. Definitely, I don't know. In some ways, it feels a lot rougher, I guess, but yeah. I mean, if we're comparing it to now, it's way different, and not for better or for worse, I guess. But no, this was a great pick, great 4-issue miniseries type book. Anyone out there who's interested in crime, crime stories, comics, definitely check this out. I'm pretty sure it's still in print. You can go purchase the trade paperback.
I have it right here, just lying next to me. It just came out in trade paperback after like a decade. I think Image put out a hardcover in 2012, and that was the first time, because like I think Brubaker owns all the rights to his stuff now, so that's why he can publish it. Because like I said, this was his first work. This was published under DC Vertigo, which you hint on like the mature, like very kind of dark themes here. I'm surprised that you would find this even in like a Vertigo book with some of the material discussed. But 1999, so you're kind of, I can't remember like when SVU for Law and Order would start up, but I think it lines up similar. So it's not completely taboo to have some of these elements in a comic book, especially like looking at what you would see on television at that point. They kind of, mirror each other, right? But yeah, it's for a DC Vertigo book, it's definitely something that you wouldn't normally see. And also, this isn't something, in the Vertical wheelhouse that you would normally see published as a crime book. They didn't publish a lot of crime books at Vertigo. I mean, overall, I wish that we would get more of this. There's a universe where we did get the 3 more miniseries that he had originally planned. I do have to say, Brian Michael Bendis writes a very nice beginning in the trade paperback here, where he discusses, he said this is his favorite of Ed's works, and he makes like jokes about like if you're a real Ed Brubaker fan, people argue. And he wrote this back in 2012 when the hardcover came out, and he's like, people argue what's your favorite and what's the best Ed Brubaker work. I'm curious to see what he would say now, with a decade more of more criminal work and things like the Fade Out and whatnot, and then Kill or Be Killed. But he's like, no, this has always been my favorite Ed Brubaker crime work. And he also talks about their time at Caliber Press a little bit, which I thought it was interesting. The back matter material here too is also very interesting. It contains the story that they wrote that he wrote for, I think it was, Vertigo Winner's Edge #2, which was kind of a 10-page story called Gods and Sinners, which was published before the series came out. So the trade paperback has everything kind of in this world of Scene of the Crime, which is very different from Criminal, because you're following a private investigator. I'd be interested to see, like, because Criminal has like the different characters that weave in and out with the family histories and stuff. Like, it would be kind of cool if like the next Criminal story he writes, like Jack Harriman's just there, and you just go with it. I know Detective, I forget who plays him, but like Detective Munch from SVU and X-Files, that actor always just plays Detective Munch on whatever show he's on. So you could just do something like that, and it's like, yeah, he's my character. He's in the criminal world, but also he was in his own little place because nothing really separates Scene of the Crime. Like, there's nothing saying it couldn't be in the DC Vertigo world. I mean, I'm sorry, in the criminal world, even though it was published at DC Vertigo.
Yeah, I mean that would be a cool Easter egg. I mean, I feel like part of me feels like some of like all of Ed Brubaker's like crime stuff is loosely connected, but like not really. I don't know. There's probably some like weird theory out there, but maybe not.
Like a Tarantino-esque theory that all of his
Yeah,
movies are in the same universe.
yeah, because like they all have like kind of similar themes in some way or another, but like they're all very different. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just grasping at straws.
I don't think so. I mean, Criminal's already heavily connected, so
Faked out to bring Vince back. Vince, you can come in here.
overall, anything else to say? I think it's worth a pick.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good addition. I don't think it tops my list of Ed Brubaker stuff, just because of kind of the era it's from and some of the little things I have an issue with it for. But it's definitely interesting to read that for sure.
It's to compare it. It's like going back in. I'll use the Turner Classic Movies comparison. It's like you throw it on, like it's a movie you're watching on TCM that stars an actor and a director but it's like from earlier in their career, so you get to see it evolve. It's exactly like I could picture like your Robert Osborne coming on here going like, Scene of the Crime is like, these people from this, and then he gives you your rundown before this would play if it were a movie. But no, I mean, you can clearly see like the evolution come here, but like we said, the narration box is like, and he talks about this, and he's like, I cringed when I looked at the old scripts because the narration boxes are just so filled. And he called out the kudos to the letter, but also Michael Lark already works in the matter for where he already places his letterboxes in his art, so that's why it worked out so well. Because like, I guess to compare it to maybe Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil on Daredevil, like those books were like hugely long scripting for someone who hadn't really written comics before. Because Ed, before working on this, he'd only really written scripts for him because he used to write and draw himself. So this was like the first real time he was writing for someone else to draw his writing. So we had to adapt to that.
Yeah.
But overall, it's really good. Like, it's not bad. Like, I think it would, like, it's really good, and I'm struggling to see where I would put it, but like, I feel like it surprised me where it strikes the uppers for me more than the lowers.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's good. It's just tough because everything that they write is good. Like there's very few stinkers in that bunch.
I can't think of any true stinkers, but also I guess I said we talk about it briefly, but like the Discovery, I would have to say that there's one moment where I don't like it because they use the same reveal twice.
Mm-hmm.
The reveal where we learn that Jack has a glass eye, it's very smart because you only see like the one half of his face. And I went back and looked at the book. You only see that one half ever on the screen until he's having dinner at the diner where Maggie points out that, oh, you have a glass eye. You have a fake eye. And then we see the camera's lighting shift and we actually see the scar over his eye. The part where he's talking to the survivor of the fire and they do the Two-Face thing where the face is all scarred up. you did the same reveal twice, and it was like the one was for the shock value, while the one was kind of like more smarter and layered. I was like, we didn't need the same reveal, like half face eye reveal twice in the same book. That would be like one of the big merits I have against it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a party foul.
Overall, though, recommend it. Go grab it. I don't have anything else. We're not going to do picks of the week for this week. We only talked about like 3 things. I think this would probably be your pick of the week anyway. But technically, those aren't eligible. But we'll be back next week with something else, probably.
All right, I have one little tangent trivia. Since Mike mentioned, I didn't even connect this together. Did not even think of this, but Mike mentioned how Michael Lark was not available. Can
you get the widescreen, please? I don't like us all like this. We're too close together.
Yeah. So Mike mentioned how Michael Lark was not available to do follow-ups to the series due to other projects, particularly a Hawkman thing, and that really, obviously, that jiggered my mind. So just some interesting timeline stuff. So the Hawkman series in the 90s that fell apart really hard, that ends in 1996. And then Morrison, who's writing JLA, is not allowed to use Hawkman because DC considers Hawkman, broken and toxic. So he creates Zariel as his replacement for Hawkman, who first appears in JLA number 16 in 1998, a couple of years later. And then just another tangent inside of tangent, I always think it's funny because Morrison wasn't allowed to use Hawkman and created Zariel, wasn't allowed to use Colossus when he did X-Men, so he creates a new power for Emma Frost. And then Joss Whedon shows up, and they're like, yeah, you can just bring back Colossus with basically bullshit explanation. Go ahead, you're Joss Whedon. And then, of course, go Google Joss Whedon right now. But so Morrison can't use Hawkman, but then Hawkman fully reappears in 2001 in JSA, with Jeff Johns and all that stuff. But Legend of the Hawkman, which is a 3-issue prestige miniseries drawn by Michael Lark, written by Ben Robb, who he's done some other things, but nothing like huge that I can cite off the top of my head. I think he co-wrote Beast Boy miniseries with Jeff Johns very early on. But Legend of the Hawkman is 3 issues. It actually came out in 2000 before Hawkman officially came back in JSA. But it's like set in the past of the characters. Like the idea is it's like one of their earliest things when they arrive on Earth as the Thanagarian version, which wasn't even the version that Johns picked up and everything like that. Just interesting. And I can confirm it has very beautiful Michael Lark art. So if you're a fan of Michael Lark and you see those in the back issues, especially since it's never been reprinted, it's just 3 issues. They're prestige. It's probably nearly 100 pages total if you add them up. Beautiful Michael Lark art. And even though it's never been reprinted and doesn't matter at all, probably one of the easiest ways to try out a Hawkman story if you do find it. So that's where I'll leave off things with a dumb little connection to Hawkman. And I think that's the show. So thanks for listening or watching, and have a good night or morning or whenever you're listening and wherever you're listening. Bye-bye.